Hey fam, so today we're still talking about the USAID issue, and the thing today we're trying to understand exactly why the US is doing this and how it may actually affect Malawi and other African nations, especially in the coming months and years. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we have to really brace ourselves for a very tough 4 years, especially with Trump still in power. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the USAID and some of the programs that has been funding, and then we want to look at the implications that will be for Malawi and also some of the African countries that benefit from the aid that comes from USAID. And also want to understand why exactly is Trump trying to end so much of what USAID does. And I want to get some perspective. I hope this will be helpful and interesting. So let's get the conversation started.
Agency for International Development, or USAID, is uncertain.
USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
The agency employs more than 10,000 people, with about two-thirds serving overseas, according to a recent Congressional Research Service report. President John F. Kennedy created the organization as part of the Foreign Assistance Act of 1961 with the goal of administering aid to foreign countries to promote social and economic development at the height of the Cold War.
We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.
Under the 11 presidents to follow, USAID has been instrumental in helping to alleviate poverty, disease, and other crises in strategically important countries, according to a CRS report. In 2023, the agency managed and appropriated more than $40 billion in aid, with the largest sums going to Jordan, Ethiopia, and the top recipient, Ukraine. 10 NGO leaders in Ukraine telling Reuters they were left scrambling on Thursday after the U.S. suspended funding as the Trump administration urged staff in an internal memo to put America first. We have not been able to pay salaries since January 24, says Ivana Kostina, co-founder of the Ukrainian NGO Veteran Hub.
And actually, this is the state of so many NGOs right now in Malawi. I think with the hot in the head, everything in these NGOs are stopped because most of the programs that they are doing, they rely on this funding. And so imagine being told in January, at the end of January, that there's no longer aid that is going to be provided. We won't be able to pay your salaries. You are relieved of your duties. We're downscaling to make sure that we're able to sustain the organization. Imagine receiving that news without any preparation prior to that day. That would be shocking. I think even shocking would be an understatement. So I think this news is not so good, especially if you're looking at it from the aid recipient. Okay, meaning if you're the one receiving the aid and you're benefiting from it through salary, maybe allowances or whatever it may be, you have a job because of these organizations that receive aid from the US. So that will not be very much good news to you. But being a citizen of the US, I think this will be very incredible for you. You would actually see, okay, now I think the government is being accountable. Now you know that your taxes are going to things that you can actually see and actually know. And what I've been noticing is that as this thing has been happening, as Trump has been trying to downscale the government and even maybe hold back some of the costs that have been burdening the US government, what has been happening is that people have been highlighting the humanitarian side of things that the USAID does only, without really highlighting the other stuff that Trump is trying to get rid of. And so some of the things like supplying HIV medication, things like helping the less fortunate, even providing aid in war zones, things like that, opening up water supplies for so many places where there is no fresh water. Those are very important things that the USAID does. But there are also some things that I've actually come to know now that actually USAID does, that is actually milking a lot of money from the US government. And Trump is like, no way can we allow our money to go to these things. And the funny thing is that I've actually come to learn that the USAID is not accountable to the government. They can actually do things on their own and have no one to keep them accountable. And so I want us to listen to some of that right now, and then you should really get a picture of why this is so vital to so many American citizens. Let's look at it right now.
So you're now the head of USAID. The head of Doge, Elon Musk, called USAID a criminal organization and added that it is time for it to die. Do you agree with that?
Let me walk you through the history of this agency, because I've dealt with it for 14 years in the United States Senate. It was created as a way of doing humanitarian assistance in the world, separate from the State Department at the time. But it said you have to take policy direction from the Secretary of State, the National Security Council, the White House, and all elements of government. They have basically evolved into an agency that believes that they're not even a U.S. government agency, that they are a global charity, that they take the taxpayer money and they spend it as a global charity, irrespective of whether it is in the national interest or not in the national interest. One of the most common complaints you will get if you go to embassies around the world from State Department officials and ambassadors and the like is USAID is not only not cooperative, they undermine the work that we're doing in that country. They are supporting programs that upset the host government for whom we're trying to work with on a broader scale and so forth. So they're completely unresponsive. They just don't consider that they work for the U.S. They just think they're a global entity and that their master is the globe and not the United States. And that's not what the statute says, and that's not sustainable. President put a pause on all foreign aid. We found a lot of cooperation in the State Department, and we have issued dozens and dozens of waivers. As we go through all the foreign aid programs in the Department of State, the ones that make sense, we issue a waiver, they go back on. We've already done it for dozens of programs.
And you'll be issuing more waivers soon?
And we'll be doing so. For example, we did it today for some of the migrant flights that are going out of Panama. It's in our national interest to help them deport people that are headed towards the United States back to their home countries. And we'll issue some here today in El Salvador, because they do a lot of cooperation with us on stopping drugs and stopping migration and so forth. So we're going through it at the State Department portion of foreign aid. We find cooperation. State Department people have been great, and we're issuing waivers and we're getting input, and it's working. We go to USAID, which is a big chunk of foreign aid, $40 billion or so. They're completely uncooperative. They won't tell you what the programs are. They refuse to answer questions. They try to push through payments. Even after the executive order, they were still trying to push money through the system.
Can it be reformed, or does it need to die?
Well, that was always the goal, was to reform it. But now we have rank insubordination. Now we have basically an active effort where their basic attitude is, we don't work for anyone. We work for ourselves. No agency of government can tell us what to do. So the president made me the acting administrator. I've delegated that power to someone who's there full time, and we're going to go through the same process at USAID as we're going through now at the State Department. I think there are this is not about getting rid of foreign aid. There are things that we do through USAID that we should continue to do that makes sense. And we'll have to decide, is that better through the State Department, or is that better through something, a reformed USAID? That's the process we're working through. There are things that are happening at USAID that we should not be involved in funding, or that we have a lot of questions about. But they're completely uncooperative. So we had no choice but to take dramatic steps to bring this thing under control.
So it could exist in the future, USAID.
Well, the aid, I think it's important to separate USAID from aid programs, okay? Because everybody's acting like somehow these aid programs are impossible without an agency.
It's very process-oriented. I mean, do you think that we'll still be the most generous nation on earth at the end of this process?
I think we'll be the most generous nation on earth, but we think we're going to be the most generous nation on earth in a way that makes sense, that's in our national interest. We are going to fund programs that make America stronger or safer or more prosperous. We're going to pay for things that make sense for the United States. The United States government is not a charity. It is not a global charity. There are a lot of global charities, and they should go to if you want to be involved in global charities, go join a global charity, raise private money, and spend it on whatever you want. But this is taxpayer money. It's not my money. It's not their money. It's our money. It's taxpayer money. And we have an obligation, if we're going to do foreign aid, to do it in a way that makes sense, that doesn't support our enemies, and that actually is aligned with, makes sense within the context of our foreign policy. And the people at USAID, at the top levels especially, have been completely uncooperative. They don't view themselves that way. They're insubordinate. They refuse to provide access. They refuse to provide information. Not now. They don't provide access to Congress. Go to members of the Senate who have tried to get answers from USAID, and they tell them, we're not going to tell you anything. We don't work for you. We don't work for state. We don't work for the president. We don't even work for America. We work for ourselves. That's not going to continue.
Do you get the sense?
So this is exactly why they're actually stopping the ad. It's because they want to review everything. They want to go through each and every outlet and actually come to the place where they're like, okay, we understand why we're doing this. It's actually in our national interest to fund this program, to do this, to do that. But some of the things that the USAID has been doing is not in line with what the government is trying to do in America. And so they're like, no, I think even the officials, the top executive officials in the USAID, they're being insubordinate to the president, and they're not really listening to the orders, they're not really cooperating with the Senate, all those things. So I think this is why the organization itself is being crippled right now, to make sure that they actually audit it, to actually see where the money is going. Because this money, to be honest, is taxpayer money. And so being a citizen of the US, this must be good news to you, because you're like, I need to know where my money is going. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? So this is really interesting. This is really interesting because for us, fallen countries in Africa, Malawi, we're concerned about, where am I going to get my next meal? Like, we need the money. We need to fund our own organizations and also have some salaries for our people. So at the end of the day, this is good for America, but is it good for us? We'll talk about it soon, but let's just hear some of the things that the USAID has been funding. Let's hear that.
First of all, Elon Musk is a once-in-a-generation business leader. He is an entrepreneur. He serves as a great ally and a friend to the president. And I think Elon Musk also has a little bit of common sense. And I think the American people really appreciate that when it comes to the federal government, because it seems like all common sense has been lost in this city. And that's what you see when you look at USAID. I know Secretary Rubio made some comments about how he will be acting as the director over that agency. And here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been taking a look. Because if you look at the waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the...
So you can actually see that some of the programs have been funding diversity, equity, and inclusion in so many organizations, like programs that do not even help the US at all. But they're funding these things with a lot of money. And you look at that, a person like Elon Musk is like, no, we're not doing this. We have to stop it right now. You understand what I'm saying? So sometimes it pains because we are recipients of the aid. But at the end of the day, if this was our government, especially in Malawi, we'll be so happy. There have been, in so many years ago, I think people were calling for the dismantling of MACRA, MERA, and these other regulatory authorities who are actually just so big to the point where they're milking so much of the country's budget. And people were like, why do we need all these things? Where is the money going? How are our taxes being used? I think it's not long ago when we actually saw that the wife of the vice president went for some medical checkup, but the budget that was given to her was so enormous. And people were like, how can this be allowed? How can this pass through the government? And when you have a people that step into the government and say, we're going to audit everything, and we're going to hold the government accountable, we need to make sure that our taxpayers do not get swindled. Imagine. So this is a good thing for America. Even for Malawi, I wish things could happen like this. We need to know where our tax money is going. Like right now, we're looking at the Forex problem, and then we see the president moving around. We see ministers moving around, going outside the country. They're using the same Forex. People need Forex for their businesses. People need Forex to pay school fees for their children. And you find that now the banks are impossible for you to get Forex. But you see the officials are just moving around with the same Forex. Then you wonder to say, do these people really care about their citizens or not? So at the end of the day, this is a good move on America. but it's not so good for the rest of the world. Maybe the rest of the world can find innovative ideas and begin to really, really help themselves. Maybe this is a good move. This is what we need to actually start to think. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment in the comment section below. Thank you so much. Until next time, have a good one.